Third phase.
I just received a phone call from Dr. Stephen Greer. He sent me a video and he says, share it to all your friends. I just saw a few minutes of this video and I'm like, I got to get this up right away. So that's what we're doing. Dr. Stephen Greer gets into detail in regards to the 60 minutes expose on the UFO phenomenon, the countdown to disclosure. Is there a false agenda in the major media? He's working on some kind of emergency documentary as we're speaking. So this is the interview via Dr. Stephen Greer. Listen up, everybody.
Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Stephen Greer. I'm joining you from my home out in the Blue Ridge Mountains outside Charlottesville, Virginia, near the University of Virginia. And this is an update, sort of urgent. Many of you may have seen recently that the Disclosure Project pro bono attorney, Daniel Sheehan, who did the Pentagon Papers, Iran-Contra, the Silkwood case, and many others, is now working with Luis Elizondo. And so a lot of people are very confused on what's going on, since, of course, everyone on this call probably knows Luis Elizondo is a professional disinformation agent putting out false intelligence about the UFO matter in through the mainstream media. The reason Mr. Sheehan is doing this, we've had a long discussion about it going back 2 or 3 weeks, is that Luis Elizondo approached him to help him with his legal case because the Pentagon was about to pull his security clearances. And it wasn't because he was doing things with TTSA, that they wanted him to do that. It was because he had resigned from TTSA, fallen out with the people that were the hardliners wanting him to present that there was an alien threat or a threat to the national security. And he has told 2 people on my team, including attorney Daniel Sheehan, that he knows, and the other people like Chris Mellon know, that there is no such thing as an alien threat, that there is not a threat to the national security, but that's the only way they can get this in front of the American people to get more overt funding for the Space Force and eventually a conflict with these extraterrestrial civilizations. He has flat out said he knows that everything he's been saying about this being a threat is untrue. Now, Daniel Sheehan has also shared, and this is even more explosive, that Luis Elizondo has informed him that he, in fact, has been in a facility where an actual extraterrestrial vehicle was stored. Now, why is that important? Because he's all over the news, 60 Minutes, every mainstream news channel, along with his other cohorts in the cover-up, such as Leslie Keane, Nick Pope, Chris Mellon, and others, saying that we don't know what these are. Now, interestingly, he absolutely knows that some of these craft are in fact of extraterrestrial origin. He must also then know that some of them are ours. For example, the recent Jeremy Corbell interview on Fox News, where they were showing these triangles of swarming, menacing our Navy ships. Every one of those pyramid triangular shaped objects with the flashing light on them are from either Northrop Grumman or Boeing or the Lockheed, most likely Northrop Grumman. Those are man-made UFOs. They're anti-gravity vehicles. Everyone in the aerospace industry at any level of clearance knows this. So this is a big problem. So I told Mr. Sheehan, I said, look, you have to be very careful. If you're going to work with this gentleman, you have to understand that he is a master of disinformation. I am quoting from a senior CIA official who wrote me about this when they first emerged after Unacknowledged came out in 2017. And of course, Daniel Sheehan knows this. He told me point blank, yes, we know this. The main reason he's working with him is to represent him and to get him to come clean. So it's a very interesting strategy. What Daniel Sheehan is trying to do is to get Luis Elizondo and then perhaps after him some of the others to actually admit that they know that there is not a threat from the UFOs and that they have been coerced into doing so. Recently on the internet, on a YouTube interview that's now been taken down, Daniel Sheehan admitted that there was an inspector general of the Pentagon had been pulled in to look into complaints from Luis Elizondo at the insistence of Daniel Sheehan about him being threatened with loss of his security clearance not because he was disclosing classified material, but because he went off the leash and was not wanting to continue to say the falsehood that these were an alien threat. And I think in large part because Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, which exposes that as an absolute bull-faced lie, has now been seen by millions and millions of people, and it's one of the top trending documentaries on Amazon Prime and elsewhere. So what is happening here, just so people get clear, is it is not that Daniel Sheehan has defected to the dark side or anything like that. He's trying to encourage Luis Elizondo, and I think by extension some of these others, to in fact defect from the disinformation and lies that they have been saying in the mainstream media, up on Capitol Hill, and in other places about this subject. The two very big lies that they're telling, as well as their acolytes, people like Leslie Keene, who had worked with me originally on the Disclosure Project. By the way, she subsequently raided our pool of disclosure witnesses after she got on the inside, and along with some other people, put those nuclear military site witnesses, people who had been at nuclear silos and in other places together, and spun the story that the aliens, or whatever these UFOs are, were degrading our nuclear arsenal readiness, and therefore were they a national security concern and threat. Also a lie, because every one of those men told me that they felt that the ETs were trying to say, please do not blow up this beautiful planet, but if you go so far as to launch thousands of these, we can basically disable them. So she is also someone who has pivoted towards getting the money and the attention and the mainstream coverage by basically telling a lie. That A, we don't know what these are, that B, it's a national security concern, and C, G, recently she said in an interview, Leslie Keene said, I think it was on Sunday morning, CBS, wow, maybe they're from Russia or China. Well, of course she knows that's not true. She sat there with people like Mark McCandless, with the schematics of the man-made UFOs, with people who had retrieved the actual ET craft and the bodies. She knows what the truth is about this, and yet she continues to go out into the public and tell the same two large lies. One, that these are some kind of national security threat or concern, and number two, that we do not know what they are or where they're from. Now, I think anyone who would do a cursory review of what we released in the book Unacknowledged and the documentary Unacknowledged, as well as Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, will see that we have proven that these are of two types. Because the head of the Lockheed Skunk Works, Ben Rich, wrote in answer to a friend who asked him, are these extraterrestrial or man-made? He said point blank in writing, signed by him on the Lockheed Skunk Works stationary letterhead, that they are both. They're both man-made and extraterrestrial. Now, this is, of course, one of the most preeminent aerospace figures of the 20th century. And this is not a contested item. It's in his penmanship and signed by him back to a friend that we've acquired. We have enormous amounts of information like that. So these people that you see on 60 Minutes, that you see on Fox News and CNN and all the media, this is the ramping up of the false disclosure that we warned about in 1999 when we wrote the paper, When Disclosure Serves Secrecy. Why? Because they want people to now know that there are UFOs, but they want to put this big lie out there that they are a national security threat and concern. That's what Nick Pope and others keep saying. By the way, Nick Pope has admitted to two people on my team that he has been paid large sums of money to say these very scripted things in the mainstream media so that he has been able to buy some really pricey real estate in Soho and London and elsewhere. One of my concerns about this is that while I normally do not engage in sort of gossip, is that now that these people are miseducating deliberately the American people and the world on this, it is a very big concern. They have stepped into another level of deception. It's one thing if you're at a UFO conference in front of 1,000 people. It's another thing if there are millions and millions of people hearing this lie. Now, all these people, from Chris Mellon to Luis Elizondo to Leslie Kean to Nick Pope and others, know for a fact just what I just said, that there are two types of UFOs seen. Man-made ones, that is the bigger secret, by the way. The ET issue is not as big a secret as the man-made ones, for a reason I'll get into in a moment. And that this is not a national security threat. All the images that you have seen in the mainstream news of the Tic Tac, of these pyramids and triangles, those are ours. And they were filmed and known at some point they would release it to open the door to this subject. But there's more coming. You saw on the History Channel where the Italian helicopter that crash landed after it had some malfunction, that whole event, we know from Paula Harris, who was there and met with the man who's now the admiral who is on that show, said that those were our human classified electromagnetic weapons that they were attempting to target UFO ET craft that were in the area at the time. She knows this for a fact and documented it. So almost everything you're seeing that's going out through the mainstream media right now is not only a lie, but a damn lie, which is exactly what Werner von Braun warned about would eventually happen when he told Carol Rosin that in 1974, and of course, which I learned about in the early 90s and have been warning people about since. Unfortunately, we're going to live through this period of this false launch of information. The only way we're going to correct it is for all of you to share this YouTube video with everyone. I don't care if you rip it off the site and post it elsewhere, do it. Because unfortunately, we're at a point now where there is a massive information campaign that is false. And the reason they want people to think all of these are things that we don't know and can't figure out how they fly is so that eventually they can put out more scary information, perhaps next month with the Director of National Intelligence report, showing even more gruesome events that have happened that show, in fact, that these are a threat to the national security. Why? Of course, that with the fascist military industrial and industrialist complex want people to be afraid of something. So this is the next big thing. It's much bigger than 9/11. It's much bigger than COVID. We've been warning about it for some time. Unfortunately, we're trying to see if some people can get pulled off the precipice, including Luis Elizondo. That is why Daniel Sheehan's working with him. Now, I've made it very clear that Daniel Sheehan has told me he would do this, that if he cannot get Luis Elizondo to speak the truth and come clean on this, that he would drop him as a client. He will drop him as a client. We will hold him to this. This is something he must do. But in the meanwhile, we should give him some time to see if he can repair the situation by being an attorney representing the sort of the tip of the spear of disinformation going out to the media, which is, of course, Luis Elizondo, who was sent on this mission. My understanding is, people are complex. I think both Chris Mellon and Luis Elizondo regret what they've done. We also know that there are other people who are beginning to come forward with information, which sounds unbelievable, such as Jacques Vallée, disclosing that in the 1980s, he saw a document describing CIA-run alien hoax abductions in Brazil and Argentina. We are going to be releasing this soon, this information. There are a number of things that need to come out, and I'm making an appeal right now. Anyone who has information or has been on a tactical team engaging in these false flag operations from the 1950s until now need to come forward and expose this as a hoax. The reason for that is that if we don't expose the trickery and the hoax, the thing that the American public and the world are going to be left with is this terrifying perspective of there being a threat from outer space, which will justify not only the expansion of weapons into space, but also the Space Force and this alien threat narrative that they've been working on for 70 years. Remember, Wesley Clark, four-star general Wesley Clark, as well as Werner von Braun and Carol Rosin have stated that they have seen documents that were very top secret, that were listing all the nations that we would get into wars with, and that the big crescendo, the final card to be played, as Werner von Braun stated, would be the alien threat card. We are there now in 2021, May of this year. By next month, who knows where this will have gone. We need to move very forward aggressively to get the truth out. So we are working so that in the next month, the Cosmic Hoax, this next documentary that all of you have helped fund, and I'm thanking you very much for that. We are already now in post-production on that. And I've seen a rough cut, the first 45 minutes. It's amazing. It's going to blow people's minds. It's going to be case closed. That film is not going to be proprietary. Every single one of you need to find influencers, celebrities, networks of people to take that film and post it on every site on the planet, the instant, I mean the day it's released. We are moving very fast with this. Now, the campaign for the fundraising of that, we reached our goal, but if we receive more contributions, we'll be able to do more of a marketing campaign and a public awareness campaign, because there's nobody funding that. We don't have the History Channel or Netflix or some big distributor putting one Indian head nickel into getting the word out. That's all up to us. So anyone who can help us with that, we are very much appreciative of your contribution, whether it's $1 or $50,000. The other point I want to make is that this report coming out from the Director of National Intelligence, I have variably heard that it'll be out June 1st. That has been repeated to me. That's early. It's due by June 25th, but I've heard other rumblings from Senator Marco Rubio and others that it may be delayed because the Director of National Intelligence has been stonewalled by some of the three-letter agencies in getting to the bottom of it and providing a comprehensive report. So it's a big question mark whether we're going to be dealing with that report, which most likely will be half-truths, disinformation, spin, falsehoods, and confusion on June 1st or later in the summer. We need to be standing by and ready to move into action very quickly because, look, the entire mainstream media, the intelligence community, and the military-industrial complex is arrayed against the truth. Full stop, end of discussion. And so we, the people, are going to have to stand up and say, oh, wait a minute. This is not the truth. Here's what the actual truth is. We know that many of these are man-made. We know they have been done and used in false flag operations. And we also know that some are extraterrestrial, but they are not hostile. So I think that this is really what I said in 1992, 93 would become a sort of a struggle for the minds and hearts of humanity, the future of our planet, and the future of our place in the cosmos. And it's a choice. We're at a fork in the road as a civilization. We're either going to choose to go forward in peace on this planet and in space, or we will be facing quite literally an extinction level event if we stay on this path of violent engagement and the expansion of the war machine in the space and the placement of weapons in space, etc. As it is, there are already very destructive weapons on satellites and on the ground and on aircraft that target extraterrestrial vehicles when they come into 3D out of trans-dimensional space-time. And we also have events happening where these very advanced aircraft made by the Lockheed Skunk Works and other places are in fact being used in false flag operations. Many of you have asked me, when will the false flag event happen? You don't get it. It already has. It's been happening since the 50s. So many of the UFO events that have been portrayed as alien are not. Abductions, mutilations, Some of the crash landings, like the Cash Landrum case, where those people were injured with radioactive waste being spewed on them, those were all man-made accidents. But they were portrayed as unknown UFO incidents, and the unknown translates into public awareness immediately to alien. So I think we have to be very clear that this is a disinformation campaign that has gone from, let's say, the fringes of alternative media and the UFO subculture now straight into the mainstream media and coming straight out of the US government at the level of the Director of National Intelligence and the Congress. Now, one thing I know is true is that whatever is in this report, even if you had the most sincere person at the top, at the Director of National Intelligence level, you must not assume that he has been given access to the unacknowledged special access projects. Why do I say that? As the person, the only person in the UFO world that can say he has done this, as I am the person who has briefed a sitting CIA director, a sitting head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, the head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Tom Wilson, who's the meeting for which has been confirmed through the Dr. Davis leak that came out from the Edgar Mitchell archive. We have to understand that in each of those cases, those men were not allowed to be briefed on these unacknowledged special access projects, nor have most of the presidents, and nor have most senators. What does this mean? It means that whatever the Director of National Intelligence may have access to will have been pulled out of this black world and put on a platter and cherry-picked, much like Dick Cheney and his minions cherry-picked the intelligence that got us into the debacle known as the Iraq War. So, and by the way, Secretary of State and former Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Colin Powell, his Chief of Staff admitted on camera that they were deceived with hoaxed and false information from the intelligence operation out of the West Wing run by Dick Cheney after 9/11 that got us into that disastrous war, and we're still in that debacle. So one of the things you have to understand is that someone like the Director of National Intelligence, those people come and go every few years. We cannot assume and should not assume that he has been read into or briefed into these unacknowledged special access projects where he would be able to discern what is true, what is false, what is fact, what is fiction. Now, that's even more true for the President of the United States, who has a lot of things on his plate, or a member of the Senate Intelligence Committee. So none of these people are specialists in this area. They're extremely vulnerable to the people who are the foxes guarding the hen house. And therefore, we can't ascribe a terrible motive necessarily to whoever creates this report, because they simply may be reporting, as required by law in this bill that was passed in December, what they have been spoon-fed. Because the big mistake everyone makes is they think, wow, you're the Director of National Intelligence, you're the President, you're the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency or the CIA. There's this assumption that you have an all-access pass. That is absolutely not true, and I can prove in a court of law that it's not true. So for that reason, we have to be careful in how we evaluate this. And I think that now this is different from people like Luis Elizondo, who has now admitted to the Disclosure Project lawyer Daniel Sheehan that he was not telling the public the truth, that there was a threat from the aliens or the UFOs. Now, if he were to say there's a threat to the national security from the unacknowledged special access projects that have these very advanced technologies, that would be true. That's not what he's saying. So he needs to correct his statement, or we will continue to expose this lie. That's the same thing for Leslie Kean, same thing for Jeremy Corbell, same thing for Nick Pope, same thing for Chris Mellon. So they either need to get off the stage and not make false statements, know what they're talking about, and certainly they need to stop repeating these lies to the American public and to the Congress, because this is a very dangerous path that they're on. Whether they're on it wittingly or unwittingly, I can't say what their motives are, but we now know for a fact that Luis Elizondo knows better than to say that A, we don't know what these are, B, that we don't have anything that can move the way these are moving, and C, that he doesn't know if they're extraterrestrial or not, since we now know he has admitted that he has been in a facility with an actual extraterrestrial craft that was retrieved. Now, these sort of omissions of the truth and half-truths are very, very dangerous, because people think because of his credentials, and the same is true of Chris Mellon, as someone who is an official who's been in the Pentagon and the Department of Defense, people take them to know what they're talking about. So if they don't know what they're talking about, they need to learn what this subject is really about, and until then, be quiet. If they are going to continue to tell lies knowingly, the way that both Chris Mellon and Luis Elizondo have done, and we can expect more people in their wake to come out telling these sort of lies, we need to call them out on it, and we need to do it very clearly, because there's too much at stake. People are actually believing what they're saying. They think that they're doing this sincerely, and we now know for a fact that it is a big deception. And it is a dangerous deception, because in the process of this deceptive misinformation, disinformation campaign, it is opening the door to this alien threat narrative, but also hiding the fact that the technologies that have been reverse engineered from studying extraterrestrial vehicles that have been operational since the 50s could then be used in a false flag operation in the future, and everyone is going to be convinced, oh, well, we've had these officials tell us we don't have anything like this. This is why they're feeding these talking points to people like Senator Marco Rubio and others who do not know what the truth is about this, but the talking points have within them this very central lie. It is very important that you understand that the reason they keep saying we don't have anything that can move like that Tic Tac or move like those pyramid or triangular object over the destroyer, the reason they're saying that, even though it's an absolute provable lie, is because it preserves the element of surprise. It preserves the element of surprise of a false flag operation, where those same technologies that are man-made and controlled by covert programs can be used in some kind of scary scenario. You can imagine what those might be, and make it look like it's the aliens did it, blame it on the aliens. So this has been going on already, as I said, for over 60 years, since the 50s. Now, will they step up that game? That's up to us. I think if we can expose this central lie, we can prevent this disaster. But that's not going to be done by CNN and CBS News and 60 Minutes. It's going to be done by us. I mean, you guys, all of us together, have to join hands and, expose what the truth is, expose what the lies are, and then through the CE5 initiative, continue to make peaceful contact with these civilizations. Because ultimately, if enough people do that and have that knowledge and experience, then the media and the intelligence community will simply not be able to convince the public. But that's why it's so important that we step up that initiative. CE5 contact is so important to resolving this problem in a positive way. In the meanwhile, we're putting out this particular forest fire of disinformation that's been set by the likes of Luis Elizondo and Leslie Kean and others. Now, one of the problems is we don't have the control over the mainstream media, as you've seen and unacknowledged. Daniel Sheehan testified that he saw a document during Watergate, the Pentagon Papers, when he was representing the New York Times. Way back then, you were talking almost 50 years ago now, that there were 42 people on the payroll of the CIA who were senior editors and national security editors and the like on the world's media. Now, we know that Richard Doty, who is a master of disinformation himself, admitted that he carried, quote, bags of cash to the media. We have many people who have then covertly and privately admitted that they've been involved in those sort of media corruption schemes. So we cannot count on the fourth estate, the free press, to expose the truth, because frankly, they are not free. And they are fed this information through clandestine contacts in their editorial boards and their national security desk. And that is how the system is gamed. So that means we have to go alternative. We have to go through the internet. We have to go through influencers. We have to do it through grassroots. And that's why this documentary coming out, The Cosmic Hoax, which I hope will be out within next month, about the next 30 days or less. That whole documentary needs to be seen by 1 to 2 billion people over the summer. I think it's the only way we're going to get the alternative, actual, true disclosure out, as opposed to the false disclosure, which of course we warned about for now almost 25 years. Now, the way we can do that is all of us figuring out, who do we know? Who do we know who knows someone who knows someone that may be an influencer, may have a large platform, who we can share the film with and say, here, download this and put this on your YouTube channel or some blockchain site or whatever it is, because we're going to distribute it through the people, and you guys are the people. So again, I'd like to thank you guys for doing that. Begin to think of how you're going to do this with us and how we can work together. If you are a contact to a major influencer that has millions of followers who can post this for us, please do. I've recently heard from an artist named Chris Brown, who wants to help us get this information out. Of course, Demi Lovato is, Chris Daltrey, William Shatner is also wanting to help us get this information out. He's the Captain Kirk, if you remember from Star Trek. So we're creating a network to do this in a viral grassroots way. But we also can rely on people just doing it person to person to person. And everyone has a list of a few hundred people they may have on their social media pages. Some may have thousands, some may have millions. It doesn't matter, because if millions of people share it with a few hundred people, we've reached hundreds of millions of people. So everyone needs to see that this is kind of how you can join in this effort. The main purpose of this kind of urgent call was to clarify what Daniel Sheehan is doing, why he's doing it, and what the aspiration is. The aspiration is Luis Elizondo will defect from the path of disinformation and distortion and actually begin to speak the truth. And if he doesn't, I've been assured by Daniel Sheehan that he would drop him as a client. So this is what we will be watching for. And we don't know how this is going to turn out. This is really up to what Mr. Elizondo wants to do. But we are going to be watching, and we're going to ask all of you to be watching with us. So thank you very much, and stay tuned. And if you want to help us, go to ce5film.com, and you can contribute some to that so we can create a huge campaign to get this documentary out in a month or so. Again, thanks for your help. Bye-bye.
I want to thank Dr. Stephen Greer for allowing us to share this incredible insight. Is this countdown to disclosure going to give us something new? Is there a false agenda by the major media? Why is it the same people over and over again being allowed access to the major media, the same talking heads? What about dealing with the public? What about the cosmic Watergate? Are we going to bust through this and get the information we want? I expect so. Everybody stay tuned right here at Third Phase of Moon. We've got more videos coming in from around the world in regards to the phenomenon. Everybody keep your eyes on the skies. Blake Cousins. We'll see you next time.